All right, everyone, welcome back into another fantasy golf video. Going to be putting the final touches here on the AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-A, giving you guys the lineup process, giving you guys some fades, but also touching on some round one showdown and some round one props as well. Let's go in and get into it. So real quickly, I do just want to start out with some prop coverage here because we do have one clear outlier right now. That's going to be Hideki Matsuyama. We're going to see a one-stroke difference between PrizePicks and Underdog. And so right now, when we look at this prop line, we can see that, sure, on paper, it's going to seem like PrizePicks might be a little bit too aggressive and Underdog a little bit too low. What we're hoping for is a middling. We're hoping to get 71 for that stroke average. Okay, so this is a good prop bet to go ahead and use on Underdog. Earlier on in the day, we did have Wyndham Clark and also Ricky that were also in this exact same boat. They have since adjusted those, so I do think they're going to adjust this prop, but since it was there, I wanted to call this out to you guys because that is a big edge. And then just getting into like the round one showdown picks as well. Sure, that kind of goes hand in hand a little bit, but what we're going to do is we're just going to look at the best round one picks for the showdown. Now, I do want to call it that there are 3 different contests out there. There's going to be one, the main one. Okay, and for the main one, what you want to do is you just want to look at the golfers that are going off of the Pebble Beach golf course. That is going to be the easier of the 2 courses this week. At least that's what the historical data has told us, that typically speaking, Spy Gas plays a little bit more difficult. Thus, we want to be looking at Pebble Beach for our round one showdown plays. And so all I'm going to do is I'm going to sort by projected fantasy points, scroll down to the bottom, and we can see these are going to be the players that we want to be on for round one showdown. Okay. Now, what I have done already for the 9-to-5 lineup builder is I have went ahead and already adjusted their lines for this. Okay, so golfers that are going off of Pebble Beach are gaining a pretty significant advantage, and I did that specifically so that we could get the Pebble Beach course advantage as compared to the opposite of that. So, for example, for round one showdown, we can see Scotty, Rory, Hovland. I don't know what's going on there pricing wise, regardless, but they are getting a bump because of where they are going off of. Okay, they're playing on the more difficult course, so naturally you want to end up on Xander Schauffele, who also gets a bump because he's going off of Pebble Beach. And so I did run that out. Here are some of the builds that I came out with. I did kind of cap some players, but you guys can see my player exposure as well for that. Okay, so yeah, obviously getting a lot of those golfers, you know, the golfers we want to be targeting, right? I might lock in Xander to about 60% of my round one showdown builds. And then maybe like Max Homa, I want to get to probably a little bit more, maybe 45%. And then Russell Henley does project out well as well. So those might be players I get to a little bit more. Now, those are all players that I was able to get to early in Underdog best ball drafts as well. If you guys are interested in that. Here are kind of some of the lineups I've been able to get out there for the Underdog best ball drafts. Now, these are not going to be as big of edges right now because people have adjusted. It was weird. Like midway through the morning, I saw that the public had started to adjust. They're like, oh yeah, that's right. There is a course advantage here. So might not be worth your while there. But before we get into kind of the lineup process for the main slate, I do just want to call out, if you guys do want to head over to Underdog and use either the Hideki prop or use the 9-to-5 showdown tool to make some good best ball drafts, or you can use the lineup builder as well. Just sort by projected fantasy points. Use the promo code 9-to-5 for your first time signing up. That'll give you a 100% match on a deposit of up to $100. All right, now let's go ahead and get into the lineup builder. I do want to start out with the ownership leverage for this week. So I strongly believe like all of my golf tools are some of the most underutilized in the industry, but I kind of feel like the ownership leverage tool is probably the most underused. Like Jaeger was the second best leverage player on the board last week, and that was awesome. We love that, right? So looking at this week, it is a little bit different given the fact that it is a limited field event. And so how you could go about using this tool is that you could just sort it by salary and maybe see a player that you could get on a little bit more than the public is thinking. So for example, maybe like Sam Burns a little bit more, you see he's a little bit under-owned than really other players around him. That's a good way to use it. Maybe Tommy Fleetwood, he's someone that ranks out pretty well. Vegas thinks he's going to play well. The 9-to-5 data thinks he's going to do decent as well. And so that's one thing I want to call is that we had the Vegas leverage rank, which takes in how they're projected to play via outright odds, and then also make cut likelihood. Obviously, this is a no-cut event, so they're all going to make the cut. But that's what goes into that, whereas the leverage rank is the 9-to-5 data, which measures both safety and upside. Slightly different, but kind of the same thing. And then we have the average leverage rank as well. And so what we're going to see here is that all the top-end players here, and I'll just scroll down to the most under-owned golfers, is that all the top-end golfers, because of the field, because of it being a limited field event, they're all a little bit under-owned this week. Typically speaking, the strategy for no-cut events, and the data is telling us this as well, is to go studs and duds. And so the field isn't doing that too much. Now, I personally think Xander should be the highest owned player this week, and probably Max Homa as well. And Xander is sub 20% right now. Now, I do think that this will get corrected throughout the day, but right now, as it sits, that is a pretty big projected edge. And even if you don't like Xander, maybe like Scotty, he should be higher owned as well. And with that being said, then you're going to go more of a studs and duds approach. And so I personally don't think Kurt Kitayama is a little bit overowned. I don't think Seabez is overowned as well. Okay, that's kind of the nuance of this week, is that because it's a no-cut event, players are just kind of grouped together. And so maybe you can find a slight edge here or there, but really where there's going to be mistakes in ownership is mostly in the grouping of it. Like, again, this high tier golfers here, they're all a little bit too low owned compared to how they're projected to play, compared to their expected likelihood as well. And so before I get into like the lineup builder process of this, like max entering and whatnot, I do want to show you guys kind of, this is just going to be taken from the 9 to 5 write-up, which you can find on the 9 to 5 homepage, or I tweeted out, but you just scroll down, it's gonna be right here, okay? Or you can find it under the golf tab. It's gonna be under tournament write-up, okay? But what I'm gonna be doing is I'm just gonna be applying what I put together in the 9 to 5 write-up. Again, one of the most underutilized pieces in fantasy golf, really out there. So take advantage of this, guys. I've been putting this out for like the past 5 years. People that have, are weekly readers of it, I know they have done well. It's just putting together all the stuff you need to know for that week's tournament in a curated way. Like, I don't want to waste your time. I'm giving you guys the data's top plays and then breaking it down, showing you guys why they're good plays and whether or not I agree with the data. But here's kind of my player pool for the week. So what I want to do is I want to prioritize Hovland, Max Homa, and Xander. I think those are the top 3 plays. But then after that, we see Hanan, Bo, and then we are still getting to some of those other top end players. But to me, I really think the strategy this week is going to be to do a studs and duds build. So I'm going to show you guys 2 different ways to go about kind of attacking this week with how I see fit. And so just real quickly, I just want to remind everyone, all these tools that I'm showing you in this video are available at 9to5sports.com in the 9 to 5 membership for just $10 a month. Including that is all the fantasy golf tools, as well as all the prop tools for PrizePicks and Underdog with all those other various sports. I personally think it's the best value out there. I priced it this way for you guys to get access to this premium information for not a premium price. Okay, so with that said, let's go ahead and get into the lineup builder. And so right now, I just want to show you guys kind of what I'm doing today or for this week. Because it's a no-cut event, we do want to prioritize getting some studs and duds builds. Okay, we just know that. Especially in terms of like cash lineups and just making a profitable lineup, we have seen time and time again, that is the typical approach. So what I'm doing right now is I'm going to settings, I'm going to player groups. And what I'm really trying to do is that I did the top end golfers. So like when a lineup includes when a lineup includes Rory, I want those value plays that I'm on via the 9 to 5 write-up. Okay, so what I did was like Taylor Moore, typed him in. Okay, so I did that and so on and so forth. Andrew Putnam, I think he's a decent value play. So that's what I did. Okay, and I want at least 2 of those in a build when a lineup includes Rory. And then the other piece that I add in there is like with those 3 plays that I want to be on the top end, because we do want to do studs and duds. I want at least one of Rory, Xander, Hovland, or Scotty in a build. Okay, maybe I don't want to be on Rory. Maybe I could sub in Homa for this, but for this specific example, I just want to make 20 or so lineups paying up for the top end golfers, paying up for the studs and duds. So I generated that, and then you guys will see these are my exposures. So we're getting a lot of Hovland, a lot of Xander, a lot of Homa already. So Homa is naturally one of the better plays this week, so it makes sense why he's being pulled in via the data. Some players that I might want to get off of a little bit, a tiny bit, maybe Henley, maybe Poston. Naturally, I love the fact that Rory is not being pulled in as much. Now, who might I try to get on a little bit more? I mean, not really too much. Maybe Nick Taylor in some instances, but for the most part, we're getting the correct players that we want. So this is one lineup path I'll do. Maybe I'll do 50 lineups like this, and then I'll have 100 left over to kind of make a more optimal approach. There's different nuances. I'm just going to download this real quick. There's different nuances that you can do using this. Like, let's say I'm going to reset this now. And so really what I want to do, or I'm going to delete these, sorry. So I'm just going to go and delete these because I already got that exposure, the correct exposures I want for the studs and duds. I'm good with that. I'll upload that CSV file. And then what I also want to do is I do want to prioritize kind of based off of the tournament write-up. So really what I want is I want at least 3, probably 4 of these golfers in all my builds. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do it by priority. So I want Victor Hovland, Max Homa in a lot of my builds. But I also do want Benny Yan and Bo Hosler. Those 5 plays to me are kind of the core plays we want to be on this week, simply due to pricing and whatnot. Now, I could argue Wyndham Clark should be in that mix as well. He's kind of my make or break point this week because, like, historically, he should be an elite option at this golf course. And I think, and I put this in the write-up, it's that, and I'll highlight it here for you guys, like with Wyndham Clark, the worry, or I guess the concern with him at the start of the season was the rumors that he might go to LIV. To me, I was very much worried about his motivation level. Like we saw with all the LIV guys before they left for LIV, when all the LIV Golf Tour rumors were out there, in retrospect, we saw that those golfers, the reason why they sucked prior to going to LIV and then played decently well in LIV, it's probably because they had one hand in, one hand out, or one foot in, one foot out. And so I was a little bit worried about that with Wyndham Clark in his last event. Now I think we're going to be good to go. I don't think we need to be worried about that. So at his price tag, he is clearly a mispriced play. And so I think I'm going to try it first without Wyndham Clark, but if I need to, I'll put Wyndham Clark in there. So I'm going to save this because I want that. Let's see if this will work out. It might not. Might be a little bit too constraints on there, or a little bit too many constraints on there. I'm actually going to bump this up to like 55, maybe even 60. I'm perfectly fine getting to 60% of a golfer. And so yeah, that didn't work because we had too many constraints on it. Because saying you want 5 golfers or 3 golfers out of a 5-player player pool like that, or 5-player player pool like that, in all your builds, it's not going to work all the time. And so we take off the exposures, the max exposures, and we're good to go. So obviously then on the back end here, what we could do, players show usage here. And what I'm going to do is, instead of getting 100% of Beau Hosler, let's do 65. Instead of getting 70% Benny Ann, let's go 65. JT Poston, I think, is a fine play. I don't want to end up on him that much. Let's go 20 for him. Russell Henley, I think, is a fine play as well. Let's go 25 for him. And then Max Home, I'm fine with getting to. Don't need to get to Keegan that much. Maybe 10 for him. Wyndham Clark, again, I do like him as a play. Jason Day, I'm kind of fine with. Don't need to go crazy with him. And then, yeah, I want to get to a little bit more of Victor Hovland. So I think naturally this will get him into a little bit more builds. And so let's try this again. And so one other thing you can do is you can also just put like 3 for unique players in there. Sometimes I'll kind of make it work as well. So that's what I did here. And now we're getting a much more spread out player pool, but a much more concentrated one as well. So we're still getting a lot of Xander, a lot of Homa, a lot of Beau Hosler, a lot of Benny Ann. Probably need to get a little bit more Victor Hovland, but we are still getting a lot of Wyndham Clark naturally. And so players that I might adjust out of there, like I don't want to be last week's winner. If that felt very fluky like the other ones. So this is where I might do a little bit of kind of manual updates here. So again, using the 9 to 5 player pool, like these are the players I want to be on. So for instance, maybe I bump up Nate Taylor a little bit. Maybe I bump up Denny McCarthy a little bit in terms of fantasy projections. Brian Harmon, Brennan Todd, those are players I'd bump up a little bit so that they're getting the priority or over some of these other players. So again, what we can do is another quick adjustment here. Because again, I don't even feel the need to get on last week's winner. So we could take him off if we want to. Typically, I don't like to do that. Like the day is telling us to do something, I typically tend to agree with it. I don't want to like change it too much. What I would do though, and what I do is I'll just make sure I'm not getting too much of them, too much overexposure to them. And so here we go. So I want to be on Jaeger a little bit more. I want to be on Brennan Todd a little bit more. So I'm just giving them a slight bump in their projections. So that's my way of like telling the data that, yeah, I do want to be on these players that are being pulled in as good plays. So, try giving them a 2 bump in their projection. Maybe Taylor Moore is someone that I like as well. He's one of the value plays that kind of stands out. So again, just giving him a slight bump. And then, yeah, Denny McCarthy was a play that I wanted to be on. So we're giving him a slight bump as well, maybe like 90 to ensure he gets into some more builds, maybe 10% max exposure we could do. And so this is looking much better. Again, maybe don't need that much Corey Connors, could bump him down, but for the most part, now we're getting the proper exposures to the proper plays here. This is looking pretty good. So we have kind of a fair and balanced approach in some of our builds, and then we have a studs and duds approach. I might just go 75 there. It's a no-cut event. We're trying to get a little bit lucky here, right? But that is going to be all for this video. Thank you for watching. Make sure to give a like and subscribe to the channel. I do appreciate that. Trying to get to 500 subscribers before the Players Championship. Obviously, the only way I can do that is with your guys' help. Appreciate it. If you guys want access to any of the tools, head on over to 9to5sports.com. Thanks for watching. And as always, let's keep cashing.